Okay, we're continuing with the Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes. This is part 4 of Gatto, James Taylor Gatto. The book's by me, P. Rogers. We're going in alphabetical order. Okay, so he's the greatest teacher ever from the United States, grade school, high school level. He says, the more you know about a kid's family, educational background, personal interests, community, and cultural knowledge, the more you can help them. You build from the perspective of self-knowledge, community knowledge, and cultural knowledge. Yeah, every kid should know the history of their family, the history of their ancestors, the history of whatever ethnic cultures they come from. It gives them more confidence. And you should also know the history of Western civilization. It gives you confidence to know about the people of your tradition. You know, I find great motivation from what Aristotle did, from what Plato did, from what Thucydides did, from what St. Thomas Aquinas did, from what Cicero did, from what Isaac Newton did. They all inspire me. I look directly to them as role models. Okay, so when it's good for a kid to have those historical precedents, Ralph Waldo Emerson was inspiring to me. So it's good to read a lot and know about these people because you'll find something that gets you going. Okay, Gatto continues. The best way to teach kids is to stop treating them like kids after about 8 years of age. You should talk to them about real-world issues that are of importance to them. Thousands of caring and humane people work in schools as teachers and teachers' aides and administrators, but the abstract logic of the institution overwhelms their individual contributions. Although the teachers do care and they do work very, very hard, the institution is psychopathic. It has no conscience. It rings a bell, and a young man in the middle of writing a poem must close his notebook and move to a different cell. Okay, and I would agree with that. What I'm trying to say is it's like medicine. Medical students, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, they go to their school wanting to help patients. That's why they get into it. Almost all of them are like that. Some of them just want the money, but the majority of them want to, help people. They're pretty good students. And then the system just turns them into cogs in a factory where all that matters once you get into the actual medical system is generate your billing code. Now, the clerk, the secretary, they like the patient. The technologists, they like the patient. They got to get their work done. They're not under as much time pressure. But you get to the level of a doctor, and I think it's probably similar for nurses. I don't know nurses quite as well, but there's always some bean counter cracking a whip saying, more billing codes. The medical center across the town, they're generating more billing codes per hour than you are. What the hell is wrong with you? Are you lazy? Are you stupid? How come you're not doing your job? You need to go faster. Why are they generating more billing codes than you? That's what it's always about. No one ever gives a shit about patients. Okay, whether all the patients die, who cares? They don't really matter. Patient outcomes are irrelevant in conventional medicine. You need to know that. Because nothing makes sense unless you know that. That's why whenever somebody writes a paper about conventional medicine, I won't even read it. I used to read them in the past. They're all completely stupid and wrong because they always start with the grade 1 assumption that they're trying to help the patients. No! It's a conflict of interest to help the patient. So what I'm trying to say is the people who run the academic school system, they don't want to help these children. They want to ruin them. They want to destroy them. They want to cause dyslexia. They want to cause attention deficit. They want them hooked on amphetamines. They want to castrate them, okay? They want to poison them with the crappy school lunches. They're not your kids' friends. Get that through your head. Try to keep your kid out of those public schools any way you possibly can. Because these teachers mean well, but they don't really know hardly anything, okay? They're brainwashed themselves to believe that their stupid little textbooks have anything meaningful in them. Those books are meaningless. They're complete pieces of crap. And they teach them the opposite of the truth about history and about a lot of other things. Okay? It's the people who plan the system. They know what they're doing and they want it to hurt the kids. Think about the rich people that run the world. Do you think they want to train a bunch of young people to compete with their own children? No. They want slaves for their children. They want minimum wage employees for their children. They don't want somebody competing to build a business and compete with them. No. Okay, Gatto continues. Children know that schooling is not fair. It is not honest. It is not driven by integrity. They know they are devalued. Okay? Let's say. And the consequence of modern schooling is an unseen social cost, which has been the destruction of family life, the loss of home as a sanctuary or a haven, and the bewilderment of children who since infancy have been largely raised by strangers. Yeah, school's a place where you go to be sitting in a room that you don't want to sit in and to be talking to some lady you don't know about something you don't care about. It's ridiculous. It's really completely ridiculous. And not only that, that information is designed to hurt you as a child. It really is. Okay? And those people have no morals. They're a bunch of scumbags. Look at what they do now with all this woke BS. They castrate children. Okay, do you understand that? With the maid, the medical assistants in dying, they encourage children to commit suicide. Do you get that? Okay? I know, because it's weird. In my experience talking to Christians, it's painful. They're so stupid, especially people from America. It's much easier to talk to people from Europe, because people from Europe, they know what Germany did. They know what Austria did. They know what Russia did. So they've got perspective. Where you talk to America, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, schools, that's where you go to get an education. Okay, continuing on. People are less than whole unless they gather themselves voluntarily into groups of souls in harmony, gathering themselves to pursue individual, family, and community dreams consistent with private humanity, which makes them whole. Only slaves are gathered by others. That's right. People should be allowed to associate with whoever they want to. They should not be forced into these ridiculous classrooms where you're stuck being all around people your own age, a bunch of equally ignorant young children, so you can't help each other. And Gatto continues, do not be panicked by scare tactics into surrendering your children to the so-called experts. Teaching must, I think, be decertified as quickly as possible. The certified teaching experts like myself are deemed necessary to make learning happen, and that is a fraud and a scam. Let anybody who wants to teach. Give families back their tax money to pick and choose. Who could possibly be a better shopper if it means by comparison of what is available than the parents? That's exactly true. And yeah, you should have a lot more exposure to interesting people. I remember when there were some rare moments when we get like a picture lady come show a picture, or we even really rarely, it happened once every couple of years, some guy from the real world came in and talked about his career. That was interesting. It was so unique. I still remember it, 50 years later. Other than that, it was endless boredom staring out the window. What a waste of time. I could have been learning other languages, all kinds of useful things. Okay, we're almost done here. We got about one more page of quotes. I like this one by Gatto. Oops, I'm kind of below the page there. The school experts are always wrong. That's an important point. All the experts in grade schools, and most of them in conventional medicine, they're all fake. They are always wrong. They always recommend more centralization. And what do the big Ivy League professors always recommend? More drugs, okay? And that's why AI is going to be a joke in medicine, because it's going to be written by the drug companies, and it's always going to recommend more drugs. Okay, so... All right, but what they're saying is true. They always recommend more centralization because they always want more control. It's about control. It's about power. It's about turning children into mental midgets. That's what it's about. It's not about education. That's all nonsense. Okay, no large-scale reform is ever going to work to repair our damaged children and our damaged society unless we force open the idea of school to include family as the main engine of education. Parents love the kids more than anybody else. They care about the kids more than anybody else. Parents should be shaping the system. Okay, he's correct about that completely. I think you also need Christianity. I think he pushed out a little bit by not saying Christianity. You need to be taught Christian ethics so you have a civil society. Okay, most other countries in the world are third world crap holes. You don't want to be like them. Okay, Christian ethics make people behave a lot better. They're still not going to be saints, but they'll behave a lot better. They should learn the ancient Greeks. They should learn about the Christian religion. They should learn the Bible. They should learn about the Romans just to learn about bad behavior. They should learn about the Italian Renaissance. Ideally, they should learn the Victorian Renaissance as well as the Catholic Revival. But all of those historical things you'll remember the rest of your life. The beautiful art, the beautiful literature, the beautiful statues. Okay, he continues. The curriculum of family is at the heart of a good life. Children are ahistorical. They have become indifferent to the world of adults. This is new in the history of the world. Yeah, kids used to grow up wanting to be like their parents, wanting to be like the heroes of their culture, their people. Students learn more from experiences, from adventures, and from facing challenges on their own. Experiences and adventures are more important than algebra. How often does anybody use algebra in their regular life? Okay? We need less school, not more. It is great for kids to go on full day or longer adventures and apprenticeships. Adding value to others is how you add value to yourself. An educated man enjoys being alone, solitude to read and think. He studies the history of his family, his ancestors, his culture, his country, his intellectual tradition. He develops his powers of observation of others, of himself, of society, and how others respond to him. He has the ability to analyze new things and to mirror others to get along with them. He can speak well. He can add value to others. Close reading of tough-minded writing is still the best and cheapest and quickest method to learn how to think for yourself. Reading and a rigorous discussion of that reading in a way that obliges you to formulate a position and then to support that position against objections, that's an operational definition of education. Okay, and I got that as a kid without even realizing it. My Uncle John was kind of an asshole, okay? He was very nasty and insulting to my father. I didn't like, my dad's brother, I didn't like him coming over and insulting my dad. And I would tell my mom, why do you have this guy in our house? He's such a jerk. And my mom would say, oh, your father likes talking to him about books. So I would sit in on the conversations between my uncle and my dad and listen to them argue, and then I would throw in a couple comments even though I didn't know anything. And I got to the point where anytime there was a holiday, I knew Uncle John was coming over. I would read some books. My dad would go with me to the bookstore. I'd have a couple books. Because my Uncle John, he would read a book that weekend and let's finish it on Saturday, come over, and then he'd start asking you questions about the book you read and then calling you names because you're not going to know the book he just read. And so I would read my book and try to question him. And we would have these kind of aggressive discussions about books. And it kind of made me, from a young age, view that's what a man does. Read books and argues about them. And that was very valuable to me, because even though I didn't really have much formal schooling compared to other kids at a place like Stanford where the average SAT is 99.5 or more, I found that, so they had been in all the AP classes, often were rich, went to good schools, lived in California, all those types of things. But the advantage I had is I was very used to reading a book, cover to cover, arguing about the book, and I had read a lot on my own. I hated school, but I read a lot on my own. And so it was quite natural for me to finish all the reading and be ready to write about it and debate it. And I just had growing confidence the more I was in the habit of doing that. Like in Western Civilization class at Stanford, the best class in Stanford, the entire first year, we read all the great books, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Idiot and the Oddity, Galileo, the Aeneid, all those famous books, Boethius, Consolations of Philosophy, all kinds of stuff. Okay, John Taylor Gatto. You can give schooling, but not an education. An education must be taken. Students need experiences, adventures, explorations. This is a glorious secret. Great teachers inspire the student. Public schooling is the opposite. It's an intellectual straitjacket. All lasting education is self-motivated. That's actually a quote by Conrad Boyack, sort of a disciple, I think, of Gatto. A child's motivation to pursue their interests is the key to a good education. Okay? Slowly I began to realize that the bells and the confinement, the crazy sequences, the age segregation, the lack of privacy, the constant surveillance, and all the rest of the national curriculum were designed exactly as if someone had set out to prevent the children from learning to think and to coax them into addiction and dependent behavior. Yes, of course, that's exactly what it is. People don't understand. There are psychologists whose goal is to destroy children and destroy the American public, and they are paid a lot of money to figure out how to do it, okay? And that's what they do. They design the school system to damage the brain. It's not a joke. That's exactly what they do. They damage, public media, the mainstream media, to damage people's ability to think, to understand, to turn them into chumps, to feminize them, to get them ready for being Jenna, then sided, saying, defending an open, down south, the, what it is, the border, okay? The average dummy doesn't think that's a big deal. No, that's a big deal. That is done to get rid of you. They tell the American woman, go get more education, have an abortion. You don't want to have babies, stay in school, okay? And what they're trying to do is get her to not have kids. And then meanwhile, they open up the border and flood the place with immigrants who hate the American people and want to destroy the place. And they call them the broom to sweep away Christian America and then turn the whole place into what. Okay, so let's continue. The first lesson that school teachers teach is confusion. Everything is taught out of context. It's called the unrelating of everything, disconnections. That's the real lesson of any rigged competition like school. You come to know your place. Indifference is instilled by teaching students that they are products of evolution and have no special purpose in life. Yeah, it's enforced atheism. It is taught as a religion. That's an important point to realize. It's bogus and it's designed to hurt the kids. Atheism is very much takes away people's enthusiasm, because if you're taught that life has no meaning, life has no purpose, you're nothing but a talking monkey who doesn't deserve any rights or anything, that's not very inspiring. If you're taught Immanuel Kant that you can't even trust your reasoning, your observations, why try to do anything? It makes you helpless, learned helplessness, weak and stupid. Gatto continues, I always made it a major point of instruction to actively teach disrespect for bribes and grades. I never gave gold stars. I never gave overt praise because I believe without question that learning is its own reward. Addicting people to praise as a motivator puts them on a slippery slope towards a lifetime of fear and exploitation. Always looking for some expert to approve of them. You either learn your way towards writing your own script in life or you unwittingly become an actor in someone else's script. Okay? Then he talks about Darwin. Darwin emphasized individual competition and survival of the fittest, but Alfred Russel Wallace emphasized the benefits of cooperation. The rich kids in the famous prep schools are being trained to develop active literacy so they can communicate effectively and be leaders, whereas the average kids in public schools, the poor, the middle class, they're being dumbed down to only have passive literacy, so they will be conformist and obedient and will accept tedious minimum wage jobs. Yeah, active literacy means you can pick up a book, read it, summarize it, memorize it, and discuss it intelligently. Use that information to help you. In my experience, very few people can do that. Okay, I know that sounds a little harsh, but it's true in my experience. Okay, most people they're trained and conditioned by freshman year of high school to think reading is a miserable waste of time. So why would you ever want to bother to read? Okay, and that makes them mentally pretty weak because you got to read a lot to keep high literacy skills. So anyways, that's all we got for Gatto. I hope that was interesting and helpful.